Oh, hi Zane, thank you for coming. Please introduce yourself to our students and briefly tell about your background. Where do you work?
Sure. So my name is Zane Gray. I'm a recruiting manager with Robert Half here in the upstate of South Carolina out of our Spartanburg office.
Hmm.
So basically what that means is I'm a real estate agent, but in the job market. So I help people
Oh,
basically buy and sell jobs. I help companies fill needs, help candidates to get the job of their dreams, basically, is the goal.
oh, okay,
So
interesting. Describe your career journey after your graduation. If maybe you had internships before that helped you to tailor your career path.
sure. So I did have several internships, and those are very key for college students. I did make one critical mistake, though. So my three internships while I was in college, I interned with a law firm. Four. I interned with the state senate down in Columbia. I interned with Spink's gas stations here in their business
Hmm.
management training program, which was great. But I was an accounting student, so my accounting internship in audit with UI. The problem was I waited until my last semester in college to do that, and I actually did it in Germany. So I was doing the Landshut
Okay.
International Dual Degree Program.
Hmm.
And so, long story short, I had kind of a uniquely bad experience, and I decided that was not something that I wanted to pursue. I think
Yeah.
if I had been in the U.S., it would have been much better. But anyways, the situation was it was March of my senior year when I realized that this career path that I had been planning for 4 years was
Hmm.
not what I wanted to do, and the problem was. I had already committed to doing my master's of accountancy at Clemson, already paid the down deposit and enrolled in classes. So, it's a very awkward situation,
Yeah.
as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
But I was able to kind of get through that thanks to my network. I finished the Master's of Accounting program at Clemson and did the CPA
Mhm.
exam and whatnot. But basically, through my network, I was able to find another job out of Clemson that was really valuable and I enjoyed it. So,
Did you always know what you want to do? So where you started majoring in accounting, how you can envision your career path, or just you just played it by ear?
yeah, well, there's a couple things there. So, one, I didn't get it right on the first try or the second try because I started out as a business management major, and then I transitioned over to accounting because basically, if you are in management, you don't really understand accounting, but if you understand accounting, you can manage people and be a CFO. So, that's kind of why
Yeah.
I wanted that background. And then the second thing is, I actually basically made another pivot out of my master's of accountancy program, so I kind of almost changed twice there.
Hmm.
So you definitely can do it, but in general, what you want to do is you want to think about things that you enjoy, that are in demand here in the upstate, because I could enjoy watching Netflix, but you're not going to get paid to do that,
Yeah.
right? So
Unfortunately.
you have to look at, in this case, if you live in the upstate and you want to stay in the upstate, you want to look at what is the surrounding economy demand,
Hmm.
right? And then which one do I really like best that looks like it's got a good kind of future career track. So
Hmm.
that would be my advice for students. And then as you go along, what's important is to basically do two things: to one, build relationships in the
Hmm.
field, because at the end of the day, your professors are fantastic. But what you really want are, if you decide you want to be in marketing, right? What you really want to do is make friends with a bunch of marketing managers here in the upstate who can tell you all about their day to day.
Yeah.
And so you'll have a really good idea of what that career track looks like, what you need to do to get there, and if that's right for you, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And then the second thing is, and often these go hand in hand, is you want to get internships where you're able to actually experience that hands on. Because a lot of times you'll find, hey, I really love this, or hey, I don't love this. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But you need to have the experience because,
To decide. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Because, the 4 year college degree, and sometimes our students will do a graduate degree in accounting or an MBA or Master's of
Hmm.
Business Analytics. Those can all be great options, but they're significant investments. It's expensive to do a graduate degree,
Yeah.
for example, or even an undergraduate degree. So you want to make sure that if you're doing that, you're going to get the return on investment, and that's what you really want to do.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. How hard was to get your first job after graduation, and how you ended up in Robert Half?
sure. Well, there were basically two career pivots, which was kind of a career theme for me. So one, what I ended up doing after graduation was not what I thought I was going to end up doing,
Mm.
right? So I was planning to go do the Master of Accountancy program at Clemson and either go be an industry staff accountant as opposed to working in public accounting, or even teach because I really liked
Explaining stuff. Yeah.
interacting students. Yeah. So as I was interviewing at community colleges, I was interviewing with some companies for like staff accountant jobs. I was interviewing to be a financial advisor. I was interviewing for a bunch
Hmm.
of different things. And I got a call from Hannah Turpak, who's the director of
Yeah.
career management at USC Upstate, who was my advisor and actually my boss. I sat in your seat when I was here. And so she said, "Hey, Zane, I'm going for promotion to, they want me to be the director of career services at the main campus.
Mm-hmm.
Would you write me a letter of recommendation?" And so I said, "Sure, here you go, Hannah, done." And I didn't think anything about it. And then a couple weeks later, she calls me back and says, "Hey, I got the job. I need somebody on my team. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "This is not what I thought I would do with my life, but send me the job description." And I was a little bit uncertain as to long term what I wanted to do at that
Mm-hmm.
time, but I knew that that would kind of make sense for me, and I would really like working with her. So I put a really heavy weight on working with someone that I knew I would enjoy working
Mm-hmm.
with. So that was one theme actually that carried over to when I joined Robert Half. This was not what I was planning to do with my life. I was actually planning to get into financial advisory, and Bank of America Merrill Lynch in Spartanburg made me a very nice offer. I got exactly what I wanted. But one of my buddies, actually, I went to Upstate with, the value of networking, had been bugging me to come join him at Robert Half for a couple of years. And I said, "Well, hey, I'm going to do something. And so if you want to make me an offer that, I'd be crazy to refuse, let's do it." And it ended up working out. It's not what I expected. But basically, the point there was the value of networking, and I really chose both of those roles because of the people that I knew I would be working with, that I respected and would like working with. So, unfortunately, I think I was right on both decisions, but
no regrets, I guess.
No regrets.
That's great. But I totally agree that people and team that you work with are matter, and sometimes it's even more like crucial than the actual job that you do.
Yep.
Because you feel like comfortable. I know what I'm talking about because I had the same issue in my previous career path.
Yep.
Did you have any like interesting transitions or challenges through your like career journey, and how did you overcome this?
Yeah, well, I'd already highlighted a couple. So specifically, one problem. So it's very important for college students to, one, do internships, and then two, to do them early on in their career.
Mm-hmm.
I already mentioned that I waited until second semester of my senior year intentionally. Actually, I intentionally did this to have my accounting internship, which ended up being a problem. It made sense at the time, but it ended up being a problem. And so I was really able to overcome that through my networking, and I knew people, right, and I was able to get the right job out of college. So that's how I overcame that. But yes, the two things that I would really encourage students to do are really focus on the internships and the networking piece.
Okay. Um, what advice would you give to current students facing the similar challenges? I guess like pay more attention to internships. It will be the key.
Yeah, and the George really does a great job of having career and internship fairs. As you know, you help plan them. So I would really encourage students to, one, go to those events, go to the other events like the Wells Fargo Speaker Series and Financial Literacy Series and other events that are going on at the George. It's a great way to meet people. You leverage LinkedIn. It's basically Facebook, but for professionals, right? And so it's very easy, or relatively easy, to build out a professional profile, start connecting with your professors, people you meet at these events here at USC Upstate, and then ultimately kind of reach out and to kind of bridge the gap in the communities. A couple things, one, specifically with LinkedIn, you can reach out to folks who are in whatever field you're in. So if you're a supply chain, you can reach out to a supply chain manager at whatever company with a message and say, hey, we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, but you look like you're where I want to be one day. Could I buy you coffee sometime, right?
Yeah.
And of course, not everyone will answer you, and some people may say no, and that's fine.
But some will answer yes,
but some will. I mean, some of our students, have gotten interviews with CEOs and other kind of well-known folks just by doing that.
Yeah.
And so that's a very valuable networking tool that I would encourage folks to use. And then also you can join organizations in the community that are specific. So obviously we have like internally
like
here,
professional associations.
Yes, precisely. Yes. So obviously we have like our own internal accounting club here at USC Upstate that students participate in. But externally in the Upstate, you have the Institute of Managerial Accountants that has a Spartanburg chapter and a Greenville chapter, and you have the South Carolina Association of CPAs that has both a Greenville chapter and a Spartanburg chapter. And so, for example, what I would do if I were a student, and this is where I didn't do as good of a job, I kind of joined the internal organizations, but I didn't participate as much in the external organizations. And those are the ones that, for the purposes of building your network and internship seeking and job seeking
Knowing the right people.
that are actually more important. So I would encourage that.
Okay, thank you. Um, what are your favorite memories of being student at George?
It's probably the people for me. The professors were fantastic. We had a great group of students. I've got long-lasting friends. A lot of folks I'm still in touch with. I do business now with a lot of the folks that I went to college with, which is important. A note on always having a good reputation, which is very helpful on the back end. But specifically, a lot of the events. Obviously the classes are generally great. Sometimes they're harder than you wanted them to be, but I really like the events like the career fairs and the speaker series, or things like VITA that the College of
Yeah.
Business does, or
It's
things
more
of,
like volunteer stuff, but still
yeah,
you
things of that nature. Because you're growing and developing in your career, but you're having a really good time doing it. Basically, it's kind of work, but it's fun at the same time.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Um, can you share a particular success story or maybe a proud moment of your career?
Sure. So, my partner Tim and I were basically tasked a couple of years ago with building the Spartanburg office for Robert Half for our specific line of business. Tim had worked with Robert Half for several years, but he just came over to a new line of business that he hadn't worked in before. And then I joined him as well. And so basically what we're doing for the greater Spartanburg area and also Western North Carolina, we were able to grow that business very quickly. And specifically, there was a point last year, I've been too busy to check the metrics recently, but there's about 300 offices of Robert Half here in the US, and we were number one in the US by percentage of roles filled.
Cool.
Not in terms of our volume. The guys in Atlanta just blew us out of the water on volume, but so that was definitely a proud moment. And so we've had a very good time doing it, and we've been happy that we've been able to serve our clients and candidates in a way that generally everyone's very happy with.
This is great. Actually, yeah, you have to be proud for this. It is like seeing the result of your work is always satisfying,
Of course.
especially when you see like a good result.
Yeah.
How did your time at JCB prepare you for your career? Maybe you gained some crucial skills or specific knowledge, or maybe network was the like turning point.
Yes, there's a few things. One, you're right. The networking is very helpful. In terms of technical skills, obviously the JCB has different concentrations, and I had an accounting concentration, so I can't.
Now we have majors.
Majors, excuse me.
Majors.
Yeah, so I
It
can't.
was before.
I can't speak too much to what the supply chain concentration or major is like, but generally, one, I found the accounting courses were very spot on in terms of what they were teaching and the applicability to the real world, specifically Microsoft Excel. And this is maybe a good news and a bad news. The good news is I was really thankful for kind of the experience that we had being able to use that in some class projects. There's really no such thing as too much Microsoft Excel experience, and probably particularly I'm sure if you go to work in management or supply chain, you're going to be using it in a different way, right, than accountants do. But Microsoft Excel really makes the business world go round in a lot of ways. So I would really encourage folks to
learn this,
to learn and kind of hone in on some of those abilities. And there can be a lot of times where even if you're maybe not qualified on paper, but you impress someone and you're able to really communicate your skills, you can get a job that way. But yeah, off the top of my head, I would say that's a big one. And then what was the question again?
How did your time at JCB prepare you for your career, skills, knowledge?
Okay, yeah. Oh, well, here's another one. So when I was at the JCBE, I did the alumnus program. A lot of people are not familiar with that.
Yeah.
So
dual degree.
It was an international dual degree program, and I did it in 4 years. I think I was the first person to ever do it in 4 years. Normally it's a 5-year program. But normally the way it works is by the time you are done, you get a bachelor's degree in business in whatever major from USC Upstate, plus a second degree in international business from our partner university in Landshut, Germany, which is near Munich. And so, when you come out of a program like USC Upstate at the end, you basically have to communicate when you're trying to get a job, what is unique about me, right? Relative to, of course, you're competing with all of the other students that are graduating from Clemson and Lander and wherever, who are all great. And so, that's one thing that I didn't necessarily do it to be unique, but it's one thing that helped me
You can emphasize this.
It was, yeah, you can emphasize that in interviews. You know, a lot of the employers here in this area, I mean, you have BMW and all of their suppliers, right, that happen to be German.
Yeah.
So even if it's not necessarily German, there's a lot of international employers here in the upstate. And so they really value and understand those cultural differences. Just a couple of weeks ago, I closed a deal with a client out of the Asheville area, and it was a German family-owned company. And one, it was helpful. I didn't have a full conversation with them in German, but it was helpful that I was able to speak some German to the plant manager who's German.
Yeah.
And then two, the person we placed in that role was a USC Upstate alumni who I went to college with, who also speaks some German, right? So, you know, that's a very
Pretty
real
handy.
that's a very real example of how it can, you know, make a difference. So.
Great. What advice would you give current students about making the most of their time at JCB? How they can get like maximum of the opportunities they have?
Sure. So first, you do need to do well in class.
I mean, succeed academically.
Yeah. So first, you do need to do well in class. But maybe one thing people don't understand is it's usually not critical to have a 4.0 GPA. And I graduated with a 3.92, so I'm a fan of good GPAs.
Yeah.
But
Tell me about this.
generally speaking, what's going to be more important and make a bigger difference in your career are the internships that you have and the relationships that you build specifically. So if you give me a choice, and it's great if you can do both, but if you give me a choice between a student with a 4.0 GPA who has no work experience in college, they have no relationships or connections with the whatever field they're trying to get into, versus a student who has a 3.4 GPA and they've done an internship or two and they're involved in whatever club or organization here at USC Upstate or a club here in the Upstate, and they're building relationships, going to career fairs and doing all those things. The person with the 3.4 GPA is going to beat the pants off the person with the 4.0 GPA who does nothing but study, right? Both in terms of their earnings. I don't know if you know this, but the average salary differential for students who do internships versus students who don't is between $5,000 and $10,000. So normally, and I know that because
it's significant, especially in the beginning of your career. But I think it's overall like you can feel this.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about entry level salaries, depending on what field you're going into here in the Upstate, 45, maybe 50,000, depending on what you're going into. You know, you're talking about the ability to increase your earnings immediately by 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
And I know this is true because I've placed USC Upstate students with and without internships into those jobs, and I have the offer letters in my inbox to back it up. So it really is very real. So that's, one big thing. And then, of course, again, the relationships. So.
Okay, if we'll consider a student who doesn't work throughout the academic year, but taking only summer internships, very like narrowed down to their major, and another student who has like job to get by to pay for the school, like some part-time job like throughout the year, who will benefit most of their job experience? And this getting by job just to make the living will not like match their major or concentration.
Correct. So it's the students that do the summer internship that is focused in whatever their career field is that will see that additional money. You really don't get bonus points in terms of salary or hireability or anything like that for working at McDonald's, or like I worked at Spink's gas stations while I was in college, which is a great employer, big fan. I'm still a customer to this day, but that specific experience wouldn't necessarily have carried a lot of weight for me. What would have, say, as an accounting student, would have carried a lot of weight is the audit internship that I had with EY, because that's directly applicable to any entry level accounting job. Those are the students that have those types of internships are the ones that are going to have a much easier time finding a role. They're going to get hired quicker, and they're going to get paid more versus, hey, I'm working 20 hours a week at Bojangles.
Yes. But what about transferable skills? So they could like bring them on a table, but will it like make the difference?
What do you mean make the difference? Define make the difference.
So having, for example, 2 like continuing years of work experience for example in Spinks or whatever, and some role, and you gained some transferable skills that you can bring on a table when you're like
Hmm.
looking for a job after graduation, and just having, okay, 6 months of very narrow specific experience during the internships, and it's not the same, but
Sure.
uh, would it be like the game changer, or it will just benefit you just a little?
It will probably just benefit you a little.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the exact same thing. I worked all throughout college. I was
Okay.
working, 20 to 30 hours a week every week. So there are transferable skills for most any job, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can be, working at Chick-fil-A or working at Starbucks as a
Mm-hmm.
barista, and there are transferable skills to any industry because pretty much any job that you get out of college, you're highly likely to be working in a team environment.
Yeah.
Okay, so the ability to work well with others is very important. Um, you know, any basic level of customer service is applicable to most anything that you go into,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're not directly in a customer service role. I guarantee you, whatever organization you work with has a product or service that they sell, and we need to be very focused on what our customers are looking
Mm-hmm.
for and satisfying their needs and demands, right?
Yeah.
The ability to manage time, right, to be punctual,
Yeah.
to show up to work, to dress professionally, all those things are very important,
Mm-hmm.
and they will definitely help you. There is nothing there that's going to harm you in terms of getting an entry level role.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the point that I was making was that the most beneficial thing would be a focused internship in
Okay.
whatever field you're going into,
Okay.
and ideally you do both.
Oh yeah, it would be nice.
It would be nice.
Yeah. Uh, how students can prepare themselves for ever-changing job market?
Well, because it's an ever changing job market, what that means is
No
the
chance to prepare.
well, not so much, not necessarily that, but the point is with it being an ever changing job market,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, the student has to be ever changing.
Yeah.
So,
You're ready to learn all the time.
so here, even though we're a college of business, we're not limited to just business topics here. So, in science, there's the whole idea of evolution, right?
Yeah.
And so the point is, everything is constantly changing. All of the companies here in the upstate, they get new technology, they get new products, they get new services, right? And so some of the, like for example, the softwares that companies are using today,
Mm-hmm.
companies were not using them, 8, 10 years ago when I was here
Yeah.
as a student, right? And so what you have to have as an individual is, we as a college of business do everything we can to stay up to date on tech tools and technologies and current practices. And our goal is to kind of give you two things. One, here's the best of the best that is today. That's going to kind of help you
Mm-hmm.
immediately right out the door. But then two, and I think perhaps even more important, is the ability to learn and grow and evolve and develop long term.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something it's a skill that's difficult to teach, but it's really quite critical to have. Some people will do that in a tangible way through perhaps pursuing a graduate degree, an MBA or something like that, whether it's immediately after college or years down
Mm-hmm.
the line, or certain industry relevant certifications.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible that there could be, in human resources, for example, you have SHRM. That's the certification that
Mm-hmm.
most all HR directors and VPs have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something where a student might graduate in business management from upstate and then go get into HR, and then couple years down the road they want to get promoted. Well, they go back and do their SHRM
Yeah.
certification, right? So we're always continuously learning and evolving as we grow along, right?
Okay.
And of course, YouTube is very helpful. It's informal; you don't get a degree, but you might be amazed how much you can learn. So
Yeah, but so the tech people, I think, would be the great example, because
sure,
you don't have to have like a degree in computer science if you know how to do stuff and you can show it and you have a portfolio or something like this.
sure,
So definitely, if you have a knowledge, I think employers wouldn't be like too bothered with certificates if you can't do the job. At least that's how it worked in my country. So
sure,
if you can do the job, so nobody cares.
sure.
What advice would you give students who they're like kind of sitting on the fence and do not know where to move, how to find the right path for them? So they don't want to, they don't know what to do. When they become adult, literally.
Well, so maybe the best thing to do is to begin with the end in mind when you're evaluating career options. So specifically, And I referenced this earlier. You can look at job boards like LinkedIn or Indeed or things like that. You can talk to career counselors here at USC Upstate. But basically, what you would want to figure out is in this, assuming you want to continue to live in the upstate of South Carolina area, which most of our
Mm-hmm.
students do, what are the big fields that, there's a decent number of opportunities, right? If you're looking to be, um, a leading research biologist, Spartanburg, South Carolina is probably not for you. We don't have really big labs here, right?
Yeah.
So, you can look at where there are really good opportunities and just kind of make a list of, okay, well, these are the fields that look like they're going to be pretty good outlook, and say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, which one of these do I like or not like? And then you can go try to meet some people in those fields, maybe do some internships and things of that nature. So if it were me, I think that's probably how I would do it. Sometimes students try to do it the other way, and they try to say, well, what do I like doing? And I've seen some students make that mistake where it's like, well, I like doing this, but you may not necessarily be able to get a job in it, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So that would probably be my best advice.
Okay. Um, what are three things students should keep in mind to be successful in their transition from college to their first job after graduation?
Sure. So number one, do you know what percentage of all jobs are filled through networking?
Like 60?
Yeah, you're about right. 70 to 80%, maybe
Okay.
60. It depends on which article you read. I don't know an exact number, but the point is the vast majority of roles are filled through networking and relationships. Both the jobs that I've had post graduation
Also
have,
network.
have not existed online. There's not been a job
Oh,
posting
nice.
anywhere. My phone rang and someone said, "Hey, we've got a cool opportunity. Would you consider it?" Right? And obviously, that's a much better position to be in because someone's calling you and saying, "Hey, will you talk to us about this?" Versus you being one of 150
Yeah,
applicants that apply
for
for a
sure.
job and you have to convince the company to talk to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So number one thing is build the relationships. I really can't stress that enough, and you really can't overdo it on that. Number two is internships, and then probably number three, in addition to your classwork, is the extracurricular involvement. Being, I mean, you don't have to be the president of the club or whatever, but just being involved in some organizations, whether it's at the George, on main campus, in the community, relevant to whatever your field is. I think if you do those three things, it's going to be almost difficult to fail. I mean, you're going to be highly likely to succeed. So.
Okay. What skills or qualities do you think the most important to success in modern business world now?
The first thing is usually so you might be amazed at how many people just don't care or maybe aren't as passionate about their work as you
Mm-hmm.
might think. So, I would say what you really want to do is you want to go into a field where you really love what you do to the point that you're really focused on it. You're
Mm-hmm.
always thinking about how can I get better and be better at this. So the people who are, of course, you have to be smart, but you have to be focused and determined and always improving and evolving, as we mentioned, kind of the lifelong learner, to constantly hone and get better at your craft. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens is no one starts out being great at whatever they do.
That's for
It
sure.
just doesn't happen on day one. So you constantly get better and better. I'm constantly getting better and better. We're good at what we do, but we can be a lot better, right? And so it's a question of thinking about how can I be better and implementing it. So the people you do need to have, intelligence, right? And you do need to have, some energy and some work ethic, but what's important is to kind of take those two things and try to figure out how to get better and better as you go along, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, integrity is always, critical, right? Because you want to do the right things the right way, even when no one's looking. And, those things combined, they kind of snowball over time, right? To where, you build a reputation over time. And that's what you want. So.
Okay. Um, so you're like placing with the jobs,
Mm-hmm.
connecting employers and
Mm-hmm.
recent grads a lot. What probably the most common mistake in their like job hunt or resumes you see among like recent grads?
So do you mean specifically to resumes or to interviewing or just generally in,
Yeah,
in
in
job
general,
search?
like maybe something like beat all of the charts.
Well, so the first thing is in the job search, you have to have a very good resume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then there's two things you need to have a very good resume. First is you have to have very good content to put on the resume, which is doing well in school and getting some internships and part-time jobs and being involved in community and
Mm-hmm.
extracurricular activities, maybe getting a minor or a double major or those sorts of things. So that's the content that you
Mm-hmm.
put on the resume.
Like neat.
Yeah. But then the second thing is you have to format it appropriately, which is where, a lot of times our career services team comes into play because, students, I didn't know how to write a resume, and that's fine. But basically, students need to make a good rough draft and then take that to career services so that they can make sure that it's in a good and presentable manner
Mm-hmm.
because you might be amazed. It's almost like, applying for jobs with a bad resume is almost like trying to cut down a tree with a really dull axe. Like it just,
Yeah.
you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
So, number one, make sure the resume is in good shape. Number two, you need to get that resume into the hands of people that are hiring, right? And under ideal circumstances, you would love to get it directly to the hiring manager. So, and that's why I point out it's really critical. And I think students, I underestimated this, and I think a lot of students do. The relationships, which is why I've brought that up several times, is it's very good to apply on Indeed and LinkedIn, and those are very helpful job boards. I encourage folks to do that. But a lot of other people are doing that too, right? So that's kind of the equivalent of knocking on the front door of the
Yeah.
company and saying, "Hey guys, can I get a job?" It's usually a lot easier to kind
Use the
of
back
get in the
door.
back door or the side door, where if you have relationships with a hiring manager, say if I'm in the say if I want to get into human resources and I'm a student at USC Upstate, but I participate in the Spartanburg human resource
Mm-hmm.
SHRM chapter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite possible that a human resource manager could come up to me as I'm approaching graduation, saying, "Hey Zane, my HR generalist just left to take another role. She got a promotion. I need someone on my team. Would you be open to have a conversation?" We haven't even posted the job yet,
Yeah.
but I'm letting you know about it, right? So this is a good position to be in. We much prefer this. So that's why we really prefer the relationships and networking angle. And then third, once you do those two things, resume plus networking, relationships, job applications, that equals interviews. And of course, it doesn't matter if you do the first two things well. If you screw up the interview, you're not getting the job,
Yeah.
right? And so what's important there is, one, to have researched the company beforehand, the people that you're meeting with beforehand, the specific job, right? And to come prepared with really three things. First, you need to be able to answer the "tell me about yourself" question that starts basically every interview, with a highlight of your specific experiences that would be tailored to a job and why you'd be a good fit, right? And then number two is you need to have a tool bag of talking points prepared. Prior experiences in internships, projects that you did in classes, things of that nature that tie back into here's how I can help you do this job and be an asset to your team and make
Mm-hmm.
your life easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remembering it's not about you. You're not going to get the employer's not going to give you a job offer because it's in your best interest. They're going to give you a job offer because it's in their best interest, right? So
Yeah.
you have to understand that. And then third, once you've done that, you've had those talking points. At the end of every interview, there's always what questions do you have for us?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to come prepared with, here's 5 or 10 questions about the role. Tell me about your ideal candidate. What projects, are there any specific projects I'd be working on in the first year?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that, things of that nature.
Like, what would be the typical day on this role? Something like this.
Correct, yes. So you want to have a handful of questions prepared, just to show that you've done your research. Honestly, you're probably just going to have questions naturally, but just to show that you've done your research, you're prepared, inquisitive, and kind of eager and ready to go. And if you do those three things, plus bonus points if you follow it up afterwards with a thank you note, preferably handwritten, but email works, and you do that across not just any one job, but if you do that across 5 or 10 jobs, you're highly likely to get the offer
Mm-hmm.
that you're looking for.
Great.
So,
What advice would you give yourself while you were here in college?
yeah, well, there's a couple things. For one, and this is specific to accounting students, or maybe a little bit specific, we have a program called VITA here at the
Mm-hmm.
George. So it's volunteer income tax assistance, where we help low income families
Yeah.
prepare their tax returns for free. I did not participate in that program, and I really wish I would have. And I really, even beyond accounting, I would encourage really any students to participate in that because it's really good. It's basically an internship experience you can put on a resume. and you're going to get class credit for it, and you're going to have a really good time doing it because the people in there are really
Yeah.
good. And what's helpful is, a lot of the tax topics that you
Hmm.
learn, whether you go into accounting or not, just from personal individual income tax, is going to be very helpful to you throughout
Yeah.
your life, right? I've just from tax topics, and of course, I was an accounting student, so I took the more technical accounting classes. But just from learning some of those topics, I mean, I might have already saved enough money to pay for my USC Upstate degree. Just
Yeah.
from legally, minimizing your taxes. So, anyways, that's one thing that I wish I had done that I didn't do.
Hmm.
A second thing is I wish I had been more involved in external organizations. I
Hmm.
told you, about how important those are. I was involved in a bunch of internal organizations. I was actually involved in too many. At one point, I was in 7 organizations,
Oh
and
my God.
I had to drop a couple of those. Like, guys, I'm good at
Too
time
much.
management. This is too much. Um, but anyways, I wish I had done a better job of networking
Hmm.
externally and participating in local upstate organizations relevant to specific industry groups.
Hmm.
So that was probably thing number two. And then thing number three was I really wish I did do 3 internships, but I still say I wish I'd done more. And importantly, I wish I'd done them sooner.
Hmm.
So those are probably maybe the 3 things that if I went back that I would do differently.
Great. Thank you
So,
so much for your time, and thank you for the sharing your experience with us.
oh yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.